How you doing, family? Okay, this is Russ. I'm giving you this is my latest video where I want to talk to you more about in this video who I am and what my history is, and how I got started in this path, on the path of righteousness, on the study of metaphysics and the study of who I am, who is God, and why am I alive? What is my purpose within existence? And that's what I want to share with you in the hopes that it might help you to discover uh, answers to these same questions that I had. Uh, just in this video, I'm going to do basically a background on who I am and how I got to be uh, as knowledgeable about this information as I am. Primarily, it's because of my personality and the character of the kind of microcosmic being that I am. I am a very inquisitive, curious, always have been from birth. I've always been very confident and sure. From even a little 5-year-old boy, my grandparents and my mother told me that I was well beyond my years and confident and just very secure in my thinking and what I wanted, even before I got educated. Uh, but primarily my education, that I basically have a 2-year degree in technician, telecommunications. Um, but on my own, I have done extensive reading since I was actually, I really got on the path of righteousness and got into detailed technical uh, history reading since I was 22 is when I first read my first textbook uh, in college. Uh, and from there, I went on to read an unbelievable amount of books. And I've been doing it since I was 22, and I'm now 62. So you can do the math on that. It's been over 40 years. Um, my other background is military. I've been in the military since I did my basic training, advanced training, extensive advanced training, 16-week training in Aberdeen, Maryland, and Army National Guard. Uh, and all of my time has been reserved, so I've been basically bouncing between civilian life and military life. But the military has been a major uh, structural entity in my life. And that started way back when I was in Harlem. By way of background, I was born here in Florida. Left here when I was 6 years old, moved to Harlem in 1962. Lived in Harlem for approximately 9 years. Went through the whole. I arrived in Harlem in 1962, like I said, and shortly after that, heroin had been introduced to Harlem. Uh, Other significant events that happened. John F. Kennedy was assassinated. Then after that, Martin Luther King was assassinated. Malcolm X was assassinated. Robert F. Kennedy was assassinated. All within a matter of 3 or 4 years. I don't remember the exact dates, but all of those assassinations happened right before my eyes. And I lived on 141st Street and 7th Avenue in Harlem. That was ultimately where I lived. The first year, we lived on 132nd and Madison Avenue in Harlem. But I grew up basically all of my adolescent years as I reached my early teenage years. Uh, were all in Harlem. So I grew up as a child of the 60s uh, in the civil rights movement. I was born into segregation in Florida, but never really experienced it because I was only 5 years old, 6 years old when I left. By way of background, too, my father was a very abusive black man who, alcoholic, Very intelligent, though. I later found out very intelligent and had a very good singing voice, and read incessantly. But due to the dysfunctional way he was raised, his mom, my grandmother, left him with an aunt who was not mentally stable, and she did not want him and abused him until he was, I guess, 16, 15 or 16 years old. And then my grandmother finally came back to get him, not at 15. She got him earlier than that, but ultimately he became a very abusive man toward women, particularly the mother image, because of the way he was abandoned. And so a lot of that baggage was genetically, I believe, was genetically passed on to me and my other brothers. I have a total of 4 other brothers, and I had one sister that passed away very early, just after birth. So, all of those experiences, plus my life in Harlem and witnessing all of the assassinations, and growing up in Harlem through the, you know, uh, being born in the 60s with Lyndon Johnson enacting the Civil Rights Act. I was a direct recipient of that. The programs that started as a result of that, I was exposed to sleepaway camps, Civil Air Patrol. Went up in a plane when I was just 10 or 12 years old. I was in the cadets, so I was exposed to military drill and ceremony very early. I was in a drum and bugle corps, marching band. I was a Garveyite, a young Garveyite, and a young Black Panther. So I watched I was a Garveyite first, and then we got into the Black Panther movement. I was a very young kid, so I wasn't really a Black Panther. I was a kid who hung around, people who were active in it was really more of a after school program that the Black Panthers were sponsoring in my block. It wasn't like the main Panther leaders, lived on my block or anything. Well, I knew them. I didn't know anybody from the movement, but I was a recipient of that, and I actually ate the lunch program. I used to distribute the lunches and eat the lunches from the Black Panther lunch programs that were in the community. So all of my experiences with the Black Panther program were all about, feeding, kids. That's all I ever knew about them. Um, mm, but that experience was just phenomenal. Um, I grew up, in that time, heroin junkies, doing the whole nod thing every weekend, hearing gunfire, in our neighborhood as a result of all of the drugs and the violence that were a result, I now know, was the result of just African Americans evolving through the whole enslavement and segregation experience here in America. And don't get me wrong, horrible experiences, horrible. Uh, but in the same token, it's amazing how good comes out of bad. Um, I now know that after the whole African American culture is a totally new invented culture as a result of this horrible terrorism and mass murdering that went on, not only with the Native Americans, but then eventually to African Americans, and then all throughout the whole Caribbean. It was just mass murdering by Europeans, and it was not that they thought they were better than they actually thought they were better than us. It's just that they were just that kind of mass murdering people. That's how they were. They mass murdered their own people before they started mass murdering us. They were mass murderers. The people that they sent to America, the very first ones, were not the best. In fact, most of the best and the brightest were terrified of the trip to America. So they emptied the jails and they sent all of their mass murderers and criminals. So that's who built America. And I could point you to a book that will demonstrate how it's called The 12 Families of America. I'll get the title. And in that book, they talk about how they ate each other and they mass murdered each other, mass murdered the American. And they were just mass murderers and barbarians. They were the worst of Europe. They let them, push them out of, they wanted to get rid of them, and at the same time they wanted to be able to see what they could steal and rob, what treasures and what was available. And it was all through Spain, England, France, you name it. They all were mass murders. They emptied their jails and threw out the worst of them. I'm not picking on them. I'm saying that white people are, any word, but they were pretty bad. These people were horrible. They were mass murderers. But that was just how it was. So, I grew up at the tail end, and we're still going through that, the dysfunction that has grown out of poverty uh, more than anything else. But my goal with this set of videos I just want to explain you my background and how I got to the point where I finally realized that the best thing for me to do at this point is just continue the evolutionary process. And I just wanted to give you a little background to let you know how I got to be where I am. And I'm just blessed to be born with a mindset and an awareness. This is something you just have to be born with. But you can learn to a certain degree a lot. I had the mindset, but I still needed all this training and all this information. And I was blessed to have some strong black men in my in my growth process. And I had some equally strong white women and men in my education process. I was educated first at John Russwurm Elementary School for 1 year in Harlem on Fifth Avenue and 135th Street, and then I moved from there to PS 100 on Fifth Avenue and 100 and I believe it was 138th Street. That school's long gone. They tore the building down. It was right next to the post office. And in that school, I had some really phenomenal white teachers, because back then there were very few black teachers. I only had one black teacher named Miss Adams, and she was pretty mean. She didn't like boys, but she did a lot of nice things for us. And she did some pretty dysfunctional stuff to the boys too. But we don't want to get that. Bottom line, it wasn't painful. It wasn't really as bad as some of the stuff I've seen in history. But it was just naughty. It was stuff that was inappropriate and unprofessional. But at the same time, she was a positive figure, and what she was trying to instill, she did it, but in the wrong way. But this is the dysfunctional outcome of the whole enslavement and segregation and poverty is the main issue that really caused all of this. The racism and the white supremacy that exists to this very day is just an excuse to justify the greed and the other nonsense that goes on in an economic class struggle that goes on in every element of this world that you were born into as a young person. We were born into this stuff, and yes, I want you to do your part to overcome it. But the main thing I want you to do, my goal, is to stay focused on the basics: who you are, who God is, what you were born into, and all the components of this existence that you were born into and you will continually be born into. And I want to explain that process too. I just wanted to take a little time and give you a little background on me, but I was blessed to really have uh, a bunch of people in my life who made me the person that I am. And that's the point I want to get across to you. Don't let this color thing throw you off, because you missed the whole thing. That's what it's designed for, is to blind you to the reality. Because the people in charge don't want you to know the stuff that I'm talking about and I'm going to teach you and I'm telling you about. They don't want you to focus on this. They want you to focus on race. They want you to focus on poverty. They want you to focus on sexual stuff and what they want to run up in front of you and set the standards for you to define for you what is normal, what is good, what is bad. And I want you to learn to define that for yourself. That's the goal of this, is to free you of the nonsense that I call them front runners. These are the brutes that have set up this whole system that you were born into, and they serve a purpose. Some structure is better than no structure at all, because then you have absolute chaos. This is why I would never be able to support anarchists, people who don't believe in God at all, and people who don't believe in government, don't want structure, and they just want to tear it out and destroy everything just for the sake of, because it ain't what they want. And then my always question has always been, what are you going to replace it with? So I don't want to throw out the baby with the bathwater. This is the best game in town. If you were born in America, and everybody has their own opinion, this is my opinion. America, I could have been born anywhere in the world. But based on what I've seen and what I've learned and what I've studied and experienced in my 62 years of living, your chances are going to be good everywhere. But the level of freedom, relative freedom, you're not totally free here either. But that's how it is everywhere you're going to go. There's going to be rules. There's going to be culture. You're born into a culture. And every culture has rules. The beauty for you is you're born into an internet culture. Every culture now is connected through this internet. So now you're not just born actually into one culture. Once you tap into the internet, you're born into a global culture. I didn't have that when I was a younger kid. I did, but it was through books and it was slow motion. It wasn't as real and tangible as it is now for you. You could travel places just by going on the internet for free and just look and see and get a virtual reality of places. You don't even have to get on a plane and go there, and you can experience it. YouTube is just an endless, phenomenal, free source of experiences that never happened when I was a young kid, 10 years old, 8 years old. We barely had telephones. When I was born, we barely had televisions. And we didn't have a television when I was born. We were too poor. Uh, so, you're born into a computer age. If you are 10 years old, if you're 8 years old, if you're 12 years old and you're watching this, you are born into a totally different world. And I'm not going to waste your time talking about the past, because what I want you to focus on is moving forward from where you are and understanding the mechanics and the details of where you are. Okay, and I want you to feel free to write me questions and I'll give you the best answers that I have, but I am not the only source. I want you to go out and I want you to do your own comparative analysis. I want you to learn vocabulary. I want you to learn words. I want you to go out and I want you to compare what I'm telling you and see if you can see similar answers in other places with people that don't know me. Because when you're dealing with the real truth, what I'm telling you and teaching you is the real truth. This is a lot of the rules and the laws that I'm going to talk about, that I'm explaining to you, are real. These are things that can't be changed. So you're going to hear the same thing. And that's why I always say the truth has a ring to it. It has a sound. That's why you hear people use the term the ring of truth. You may haven't heard that in a while myself, but we used to say Some things have a ring of truth. Some people make that quote. And what they mean is truth has a sound to it. In other words, you hear the same thing from different people because they're talking about the same truth. And that's why I say it's immutable. You cannot manipulate it. You cannot mutilate this thing. It's always the same. You know, duality. There is duality in all things. Righteousness. Righteousness is about balance, following the middle path. That's not going to change. In every metaphysical and spiritual uh, uh, group that you go to, whether it's you name it. I don't want to name one because the other's going to feel slighted, but they're all the same. They're all talking about the same thing. I cut my teeth on the Rosicrucians, and the Rosicrucians are the same as the basis and the foundation of the Shriners. And if you go into Egypt and you look at the walls and you look at the things that are written there in picture form, pictorial form, because people couldn't read, those are going to be the same truths. They're just talking about it in different symbols and different languages and different vocabulary, but it's the same truth. I don't care what language you say it in, it's going to be the same. Cycles. Cycles is you start at the bottom, birth. You go through life, you reach a peak, you become aware, you know, and now you're not confused, and you know so much information that it creates a toolbox that gives you an stage or environment of confidence because you have learned and established boundaries and built a structure that is so solid and so reliable that it makes you feel safe. And that's what I'm trying to give you, is not all the answers, but a way, a system of being able to find the answers for yourself. I'm going to give you the tools and the structure so that you will be able to build a uh, environment for yourself that is so solid and so real and so good that, and you will be able to trust in it and have faith in it, and it'll carry you through the rest of your life. And you, because my goal is to give you the tools you need so that your life will be joyful, your life will be happy, and you will be free of fear. The biggest thing you have to have, and the reason I know I can give it to you because I'm living this truth. One of the rules or the quotes that I'm going to give you, I call it immutable law, is to know the truth is to live the truth. And I have built enough of this knowledge and these tools that I'm living what I'm telling you. It's something you'll be able to see in other people's faces. It's in their eyes. Once you get there, when you get on the path of righteousness, other righteous people, they're going to have the same sound. And you're gonna meet people on different levels of righteousness, and they mean well. They're gonna be different from me. You know, I'm totally different, and you're gonna be totally different. Each one of us is gonna be totally different. We'll be very similar though, because the rules that we're gonna be following, the things that we're gonna be saying, you can't change them. Duality, cycles. You're gonna learn about these things. And these are the two main elements of your existence, is duality. You and I right now are two separate uh, uh, beings living in vehicles that are microcosmic, meaning that we're small versions of the macro totality that we all come from. And you're going to learn this. And you're going to validate this as you go through life. And once you validate it and you get a element of this that further validates this truth, you're going to put that in your back pocket. You're going to hold on to it. And every time as you go through life, you're going to see more validation of that proof that you already have. And then you'll be able to trust that proof, and you'll be able to put it away and pretty much not worry about it. You know, and it'll make you more confident, make you more free. It'll make you happier, and you'll learn what I hope you'll learn. And this depends on what kind of vehicle you were born into. My vehicle that I was born into, I have a whole lot of trouble controlling the flow of my thoughts. And that's because I'm a very high-strung, energetic, a kind of physical person in one respect. But in another respect, I have an uncanny and unusual ability to focus. And some people tend to say I fixate, you know, but that's kind of like the scientist in me. That's the technician in me. That's the utilitarian in me. I always want to know how things work. And I'm very patient with that. And I'm the kind of person that will come back to something, maybe even years later, until I get it. Because, not because I want to be better than anybody else. It's just I'm just that curious. And the universe will kind of push you toward being who you're supposed to be. So part of the reason why I'm the way I am is because this is the way the universe wants me to be. And that's my role in this existence. Another thing I want to talk about, briefly, I'm going to segue away. One thing I discovered in the last couple of years, I used to always wonder, why do people look the way they look? Why is everybody so different? And one thing I discovered about our looks, and it blew my mind when it hit me, I realize now that your looks are not for you. And in fact, very few things that you are about is for you. I would say 90% of the things, if not 100% of the things that you are and that I am, is not for me. It's for each other. It's for the other person. And I realized this because I realized I couldn't see myself. And I realized, oh wow, I was like nervous about looking at, especially guys. I'm very nervous about looking at guys because guys don't like other guys looking at them. It's like, what's your problem? You know. But what I realized with looking at, I love children and kids and of course women. When you look at them, and just pretty people, and not always pretty people, because pretty to me is dark skin anybody, man or woman. I am like mesmerized. It's just the way I'm built. I don't know why. It's just is. And but the thing we have to realize is our looks are not for us. You can't even see yourself unless you get in the mirror. You can't. You can barely hear. I mean, you can hear yourself because you have ears. But the things you say are really not for you. Your voice is for communicating with other people. The only thing really is good that is for you is you eat. That's for you, and it's not even for you. That's for your body. That's for this vehicle right here. This vehicle, I have to eat to sustain, put sustenance in this vehicle to sustain this vehicle. Isn't that amazing? I mean, just think about that for a minute. That hit me. And very little that you are about as a microcosmic being is for you. So much of what you do, I mean, if you're a basketball player, doesn't do you any good to be a basketball player unless somebody's watching you. So that means your skills as a basketball player, your skills as a musician, do you no good unless somebody else. Yeah, you might enjoy hearing yourself play it, but the real reason you play and perform music is not just for you. It's really, for the most part, for everybody else. And that realization alone, if you can wrap your head around that, and you realize that everything that you are is about what you bring to the game. And the game is filled with other people. And everything that you're going to learn, and anytime you're going to grow and gain information, you're either going to read it from somebody else, or you're going to hear it from somebody else in a lecture form, or they're talking to you in a conversation, or you're in school and you're being instructed by a teacher, or you're in a study group and you're learning from your peers who pick up on things before you do. They are going to give you that and snap you into that reality, and you're going to say, aha, based on what somebody else is going to tell you. So that is proof of what I have always, or I have come to realize about this symbiotic relationship. And there's a rule that I have mentioned in earlier videos that says, as above, so below. And that speaks to the symbiotic relationship that is 24/7, that exists with everything in your existence, both animate and inanimate. Just wrap your head around that. And now you're dealing with serious metaphysics, and you're dealing with serious structure about your place, your perspective within the universal spirit that we call God. And it's at play every millisecond of your existence. It's always at play because you're breathing. And when you breathe in and you breathe out. Two, in, out, duality. Cycle. In, your breath reaches the peak, you have to exhale, out. Go back to the beginning, back in. Okay, and that's called a cycle. So there's the other immutable law. Our whole existence is based on cycles. Just wrap your head around that. And when I learned this, I was just amazed. It's amazing. If you just take a minute, there's so many things if you sit down and just think about it, focus on that thought, the reality that everything about you, everything that you are a part of, is based on cycles. That's one fact that you cannot get around. It's immutable, can't change it. Everything is cycles. And that's both animate, which means animals, things that you can see moving, and inanimate. You can't see the cells in your body that are moving unless you get in a microscope and put them on a slab or something like that. But your day-to-day travels, you can't see it. The molecules in this bookcase right here, you can't see them moving. But if you get close enough and put them under a microscope, they may appear not to be moving. But if you go deep enough on an anatomical level, on an atomic level, atoms and neutrons and protons and all that, there's electrical interaction. Stuff is moving in this. Okay, and so that brings me back to the other thing I talked about, which is this macrocosmic, microcosmic relationship that is electromagnetic in nature on this planet, and actually all throughout outer space. And it is infinite. We are finite because we're on a planet that has boundaries. You can leave this planet, so then you're leaving the boundaries, and that's why the planet is finite. We appear to be infinite because we're on the planet. It's kind of like you can't see the forest because you're too busy being a tree. And that's the microcosmic experience that we are having right now. As above, so below. As the planets orbit around the sun, and the sun sits in as a part of a galaxy or a solar system, the center of a particular small solar system, there are almost infinite number of solar systems out in space. And our solar system is but one in a galaxy, millions and trillions in this galaxy. And there are, get your head, get ready for it. And you can do astrology, and you'll learn this on YouTube. Everything is there. There's an unlimited a number of galaxies. Woo. I think we're on the Milky Way galaxy or something like that. You know, you don't need to know all the details. And I don't want you to spend a whole lot of time. I don't think it's healthy. I mean, unless you want to do astrology, go ahead. But I want to stay focused on just the principles and the rules. But it's just fascinating and empowering. I find it to be unlimitedly empowering to realize that I am aware. I've been blessed to know that, and to have this knowledge and this, what we call the realization of self, that once you learn these rules and you can actually see them at play, it's not that you have to put them at play. They're already at play. You're just not aware of it. And once you, a lot of you are probably asking, Russ, why are you telling us all this stuff? What are we going to do with all this stuff? Well, I'll tell you what you can do with it. Once you learn this stuff, you, depending on what kind of, I call it, an X-man you are, however, I say that some of us are born, and I believe in reincarnation. Reincarnation is a part of the cycles that I just explained to you. You're born, you reach a peak in your life where you're the best you're going to be, and then you start to degrade. Your vehicle starts to degrade because your vehicle is finite. The macro is infinite. Your spirit is from the macro and a part of the macro that has been placed into this micro entity, vehicle, in order to have a human experience. So that's what you were born into. But who you are and what you are is you will always be God, having a human experience. To put it in the most practical and sensible, realistic, just simple form. And you cannot change that. It's just the law, it's just the rules, it's just the structure and the order that you were born into. You can't change it. I'm just trying to teach you about it. And now you can spend the rest of your life validating it, depending on the level of your spiritual development. You will come to see this is not something that's negotiable. The macro spirit that we are at that level, which is everywhere. And the characteristics of the macro explains to you very, very clearly that the macro, which we call God, has no emotions because it doesn't move and it doesn't think, and time doesn't even exist for God, because God is already everywhere you're gonna go. So, and movement is related to time. Time becomes apparent because of movement. But if you are a omnipresent being, and the word omnipresent means you're everywhere all the time. So therefore, there is no time because there's nowhere to go. So everywhere you go, you're already there. So isn't that amazing? I am fascinated by that. I find that realization to be fascinating. And I don't see how anybody cannot be fascinated by that. And that's what I want to give you. I mean, that should give you extreme joy to realize that you are this being. And I know it's very difficult for you to accept this reality because everything we're taught in the church and all of this nonsense, this unbelievable nonsense that we were taught is, it's just unbelievable. And the reason they taught us that is because they don't want you to think for yourself. Because if you start thinking for yourself, you won't want to go out there and buy that Apple phone. You won't want to go out and buy that new pair of Nike sneakers. You won't want to go out and buy, if you're a billionaire or a millionaire, 3, 4, 5 houses that you don't need. You can only live in one at a time. It's insane. It's just insane. But once you accept these basic realizations of who and what you are, why do you need to buy something that you already are? What do you really need? What I do like about the Jesus story is it's a symbolic story, like many of the stories in Egyptian time. These are all symbolic stories to teach you these same principles. Once you realize you are God, you don't try to own anything. Why would you need to own yourself if you're everywhere all the time at the same time? Now that, to me, that does it. If you're everywhere all the time at the same time, then there's nowhere to go. And there's nothing to own. I say one of my philosophies is that really helps me to enjoy being righteous, because I love being righteous. I think it is the most liberating, empowering realization to have in life. Imagine, everybody is you. And in this case, your brother, your sister, or as they say, but for the grace of God, go I. Well, if I am that I am, then everything that exists is me. So I don't have to want what you have. I already have it. Because I'm everywhere all the time. I don't have to want to be like you because I'm already you. So why do I have to want to be like you? No, I want you to be what you are, and I'll be what I am over here, because at the next life, but for the grace of God, I'd be you. There's nowhere to go. There's nothing to want. I don't need to want anything. I mean, when I get hungry, I do want something to eat. If I'm thirsty, I do want water. Speaking of two-way, I got to take a drink of water. So that is I think, one of the most empowering realizations, is the realization of self. And that will come to you as you gain more knowledge. But it usually happens at an age, typically, usually in your late 30s, 40s. If spiritually, there's different levels of growth. There's physical growth, there's intellectual growth, and in my view, there is a spiritual growth that comes from being reborn a number of times. So there's cycles within cycles within cycles. There's a cycle between manifestation and unmanifestation. When your vehicle ceases to function, your spirit cannot manifest in this plane. So your spirit leaves the vehicle, goes, and it begins to break down and go through the cycles and processes that it needs to go through, while your spirit is instantaneously placed in another vehicle, totally ignorant and oblivious to everything that has happened in the last life. And why? Why would you do that to yourself? Because the answer that I have figured out, excuse me, is once you're omnipotent and you know everything all the time, and there's nothing to discover, and every thought is you already know, and compound that, add to that, that you are everywhere all the time, you never don't exist. You always exist, whether it is in physical form or spiritual form. You always exist. There's nowhere to go. There's nothing to do. There's nothing to learn. There's nothing to know, because you know everything. You are thought itself. Imagine that. Imagine how boring, how senseless that would seem to you as a conscious, aware being. Nowhere to go and nothing to learn, because you know everything already before it even, everything that is, you admitted it. I am that I am. I just am. You just are. All you do is just exist. That's like somebody who is a quadriplegic, born into a body and incapable of moving or doing anything, speech, can't even wipe your own backside. What a horrible life that would be. I consider that would be real punishment, you know. But what you would do in a situation like that, just as a defense mechanism, you would do exactly what happens. You would take a piece of yourself and you would make it forget everything about you. And you would call yourself a baby. And look how babies are when they're born. Some of them, when they get older, you will see a spiritual strength in them. But in the very beginning, when they come out the womb, they can't even wipe their own behinds. Can't feed themselves. Can't protect themselves at all. They know nothing. You have to teach them how to talk. You have to teach them how to laugh. You have to teach them. You don't have to teach them to breathe. Now that they do. And you don't have to teach them to eat, but if they don't get something to eat, they will literally starve to death and the vehicle will die. That's how incapable of doing anything for itself. And that's exactly what you wanted. We decided to create this beingness. We decided to create this cycle of birth, growth, maturation, peaking, senior, elder, becoming an elder, and the vehicle dying, and the whole process starting all over again, because you want to move away. You don't want to ever be stuck again. Stuck in infinity. Stuck in knowing everything. Having no feelings, no emotions. You can't. You can't. They don't exist. You're too powerful. You're too big. Can't exist. Imagine that. Put your head around that. This is what it's logical. It's just basic, simple logic. This is not rocket science. You don't need no PhD to figure this out. Don't let nobody tell you that. Nobody, you don't need anybody to tell you about you for a price. That should be the first alarm bell to go off in your head. Is that somebody's telling you to follow me. And for a price, I'll tell you who and what you are. Would you charge yourself to tell yourself about you? Just think. You see what I'm saying? And again, this is another thing. Ask the right question, and it almost comes with its own answer if you ask it right. And you're just using simple. Don't get into this the paralysis of analysis, overanalyzing all that crap. It's right in front of your face. And in that same realization, you can also experience that realization actually gives you a free pass. You don't need nobody's permission to feel the oneness with God, because that's who you already are. Now, you can spend the rest of your life validating this, but I'm telling you where my power and where my peace comes from, where my joy and my happiness comes from, because I've been living this way for over 20 years. And I've been trying to tell as many young people as possible about this, to give them these keys, to give them this freedom, to free them from the shackles of dysfunction of the way they were born and raised in the neighborhoods, with all of the guesswork and all of the fear and all of the go along to get along. That's why I tell every young person, learn some martial arts, go in the military, learn how to discipline and control your vehicle. Learn the steps of moving out of any situation. Any situation. You have the power. You were born with it, but you don't know you got it. And when you don't know, like I've been telling my kids, my young people around me for at least the last 30 years, knowledge is power. Power to do what? To build an environment of security, strength, knowledge, joy, and freedom to be and do whatever you want. And you know how you do it? Step by step, letter by letter, word by word, network by network, person by person. Everything you learn, you put it in your chest. You know, if you need to change your environment, find a group, find an organization, find somebody that's doing things that moves you out of where you are, and you join them and you go along with that until you accomplish what you want. And when you got what you need, step off. That's why I tell people who you get into these religions, no sir, you're not there to stay there. That's why I'm doing these videos. These videos are free. And when you're done, cut them off. Go out there and live life. To know truth is to live truth. I'm just giving you the truth. But you got to go out there and validate it by living this information, cross-checking it. You have to trust me and believe in me. I don't want no money from you, but I'm going to tell you this, even though I don't want no money from you, I want you to go out and I want you to validate this. I want you to check with other people. Like a lot of this stuff I'm telling you right now, this is not me. This is not just me. All these people helped me to come to this realization. Anyway. Perfect example of what I'm talking about. This is stuff that I have read in the book called The Secret. And I've also read another book by Charles Hannell, which is really where a lot of the book The Secret was based on the teachings of Charles Hannell. And Charles Hannell wrote his book back in 18 something. As when I was talking about how unlimited and the macro universal self, how powerful, and the fact that that you are God. This brother here talks about it. John Hagelin. Here's the way he explains it. One of the greatest teachers and avatars. I've met many great teachers and avatars I've read. I've never met these people. And this guy says, all that exists is the one universal, he calls it a mind. I call it the universal spirit. Okay? And there is nowhere that the one mind is not. It's the way he talks about it. Okay? It exists in everything. The one mind is all intelligence, all wisdom, and all perfection. And it is everything and everywhere at the same time. This one sentence right here is what triggered my mind to realize, and it opened my mind to realize what was already there. The connection and the realization that I am God. You are God. Everything that exists is God already right now. He says, it is everything and everywhere at the same time. And subsequently from that statement, I drew the logical conclusion that, oh, well then, if it is everywhere at the same time, then there's nowhere to go. That's just my logical conclusion. If there's nowhere you need to go because you're already there, then that means time itself does not exist. Time is only relevant to movement. In other words, it takes me time to walk from here down to my car. It takes me time to get in my car and drive to Orlando or to Fort Lauderdale. It takes time to move the distance. But if you're already there and every step of the way you are that too, then there's nowhere to go because you're already there. So time doesn't exist for your macrocosmic self, which we call God. Time does not exist. And if you are aware of everything, he goes on to say, everything is the one universal mind, and the whole of its existence, and the whole of it exists everywhere at the same time. And he said, if that's true, and if you accept that, and this is a fact, then it is all in you. And he uses the word in you. I would use the word is you. See, people are scared to say that. I'm not. I'm going to go ahead and blast it out there because I don't want nothing from you. I'm not selling no book. I mean, I wrote a book. I put all of this stuff into a pamphlet, but I'm giving it away. I'm giving it away. Main thing is that you get it, you know? And I went on to say, and we each are microcosmic components or expressions of the one universal mind, as he, to use his term. But you are unaware of who and what you are. And more importantly, You don't believe it yet. And my book, the name of my book is The Anatomy of Existence, which is the universal spirit and the relationship between the macro and the micro, the universal spirit and us as micro beings, the unbreakable, immutable bond. My book talks about the anatomy, that structure and the breakdown. That's what I'm talking about here. And then once you get a good grasp of that, you're going to automatically come to the realization that if you can formulate and learn how to control your thoughts, which is your tool that is given to you as a microcosmic being, in order to get the macrocosmic self to create what you want when you want it. Whoa. Now you're into the power that comes from mastering thoughts, and those thoughts, the goal of mastering, controlling your thoughts is so that you can master control of what you believe. Because once you really believe in what the thoughts that are coming through and what's going through and what you want, if you really believe that you already have it, the universe, the macrocosmic self, it only does. One of the other characteristics I didn't mention, I hadn't gotten to that yet, is all it does is make stuff. Because that's part of its other characteristic. It's omnipotent. The word omnipotent, this stuff is in Bibles. You know, the word omnipotent means I can create whatever I want, whenever I want to. All I do is just think it. So thought, since it doesn't have a mind, it gave that which is not it, the opposite of it, which is the microcosmic expression of it, it gave it a mind. That mind, that thing that has a mind is you. And once you learn to control your thoughts, you see the movie The X-Men, you see the movie The Matrix, these two movies are people trying to do what I'm doing right now. They're trying to give you and tell you this information in a movie, symbolic, romanticized, graphic interface, fancy, entertaining kind of way, trying to reach the one or two people that are ready. And I talked about this in my other videos. If your mind has evolved or grown to the point where it can embrace these truths and then apply them in their lives to do what? Yes, to make things manifest that you want as a practice first, but when you realize, if you truly realize who you are, you don't get into making stuff just for you. Okay, yeah, you can do stuff for you. Ain't nothing wrong with that, I don't think. But the goal is to create stuff to make your entire environment. This is where environment is so important. This is why these Confederate Republicans, they don't want you to talk about that word environment, because you're getting too close to that which will free you from their insanity. Oh, they know this stuff. Oh, they know it. But they need subjects. They need people under the thumb that they can control and get to serve them. I don't need you to serve me. See, they have a short-sighted vision of life. They're only half of their brains is working. What I'm tapping you into is going to get both sides working, both left and right side of your brain working. And once you tap into this power, you don't need nobody to serve you. You're God. When you know you're God, why would you need somebody to serve you? All you got to do is just think it, and it comes into being. Do you understand? That's what you call power. I don't need no servants and worshipers. That's for the ignorant. That's for the totally half-sighted, short-sighted, ignorant children. The spiritual neophytes of existence. These are the low, I don't want to say low life because then that means I think I'm better than them, but it's just, that is a childish reaction. That's a childish behavior. They want to stop everything from moving forward, which has its purpose. Resistance and what they call in electronics in electrical ohms, resistance. It has its purpose. It has its purpose. I'm not saying that they deserve to be destroyed. I'm not saying that at all. They are my fellow human beings. They're just children. They're just, whew, I mean, that's for the low lives. I mean, you know, I mean, not low, but that's for the, that's you. No, 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 no. We way beyond that. Way. I don't need, see, once you get into this, once you get into righteousness, and you get the true knowledge and the power that comes with manipulating your thoughts to just make things manifest, it may not even happen in this lifetime, but you are eternal. You don't die. You're coming back. You got to understand. You got to get your head around this, folks. You got to get your head around this. Especially, you know who's going to get it before a lot of you adults is the very, very young 12, 10, 8-year-olds. They're going to get it because their minds haven't been polluted yet. They're just going to take this and run because they have imagination and they have a unblemished, a unwarped, a undoubted doubt. They haven't learned about doubt. They just get into believing and using their imagination to make things happen. That's why you need to let your children, you love your children, you care about your children, you give them this to free them from fear. And please, you can get them into the church all you want, but once you tap into this, what I'm giving you here, church is for the people who spiritually need a little more crutch. They need a little more wheelchair. They're in the hospital. They've had gone through maybe some trauma in their life and they need to be cleared, as we say. And I learned a therapeutic process when I read the book Dianetics. That's all I took from Dianetics. I don't need all that other stuff. I just need that one piece, which helps people to clear away the dysfunctional things that happened to them while they were being carried by their mothers. These are all the things that affect the human brain and the human subconscious that create barriers and blocks to keep you from tapping into this power of your macro self that is already there. And all of these challenges, this is called life. And you put this stuff, these challenges, you made yourself be born into that because you wanted to create a new challenge because you're tired of knowing everything. So each time you're born, you get a new challenge, something to overcome. That's what makes that, and that's what existence needs to experience life because it's tired of knowing every damn thing. Excuse my French. If you could just just think about that. I'm gonna wrap this movie up with that thought because that's what we need to do. We need to think about that. It's been 1 hour. It's the longest video I've ever done. But I always wind up rolling back into this relationship between the macro and the micro self. And what I talked about today with you is the essence of what my whole goal for doing this video series is. To get you to understand the basic fundamental understanding of the macro-micro duality. And when you understand why the duality was created, why you, me, what I call we created this process of coming into life, going through life, and then going backing out of this existence, forgetting everything that you ever did in this whole experience and starting all over again. the cycle. But then the twinkling of an eye, going to the macro and coming back, is just a flash. It's less than, because there is no time for the macro. Time don't exist. So everything is like that. They call it a twinkling of an eye. And you're coming back into existence. You're born as a baby. When your body dies, you get this totally tired feeling. Go with the tired feeling. Let it go. Yes, all the emotions, the family, and everything you've built in this cycle of life, is you're supposed to feel it. You're supposed to cry. You're supposed to feel this sense of loss. You're losing everybody. And what I'm telling you is feel it. That's why you're here, to feel things. Don't get into this Vulcan controlling of emotion stuff from Star Trek. Cute. Nice for getting yourself together so you get on the path. But this life, this existence, this micro existence, this is about feeling. Judgment, using your brain. What you think you have it for? Don't let nobody church tell you lean not onto your own understanding. Well, then what the hell did you give yourself understanding for if you're not supposed to lean on it? That don't make sense. Don't do things. Don't let people tell you things that don't make sense. Use your common sense. You got common sense. Use it. Don't let people trick you into nonsense. And if anybody tells you that you need to be separate and there's a them and an us, don't buy into that either. Again, that's what they call divide and conquer. Now there is, but you decide whether you want to break away from somebody because they're not spiritually on your level. That's them. They're spiritually not on your level. And if you don't have time to, you got, that's your choice. If you decide, like, people who are white supremacists and don't want to live around black people, I support them. You know what I say? Let them live. But what I want to know where do they live? Because I will not go spend a dime in their community. And I'll give them exactly what they asked for. You don't want to be around nobody else that ain't like you? No problem. That's the beauty of America. Let them be. But you know what? When they need a blood transfusion or they need a kidney or something like that, see, the universal spirit has a way. Be careful what you ask for. Because the universal spirit has a way of breaking your back and making you find righteousness. But then again, you know what? That's good. How are they going to ever learn if they don't first be wrong, be selfish, be greedy? Let them do it. But this is the joy of living. That's what the process is all about. So I'm not going to fight them, but I'm not going to let them kill me either. And I go through their neighborhood, if they try to jump me 2, 3, 4 of them, people are going to the hospital. And one of them may be me, but I guarantee you 2 of them are coming with me to the hospital. Some may go to the morgue. One of them may be me, but I guarantee you if I'm on that table, there's another one sitting next to me. That's how I roll. I'm a soldier. Now, do I want to do these things? No. But they have to learn. Sometimes you got to kill the body to save the soul. I'll be back. Remember, you live forever. There's no real death. You lose your body, so what? That's how it goes. And maybe that's what you need to do. Maybe your body needs to be sacrificed in order to teach a lesson to somebody else. You see, now that you know you live forever, now that you know you're God, see how free you are? You ain't scared of no death. Right. That's the process. You'll be back. There's nothing else to do but come back. Anyway, that's my movie for today. Peace, one love, family. Talk to you later.